I guess. And let's see. Just okay. Um, I guess I will let Emily just repeat her brief introduction again. I know she's an undergraduate at the University of Delaware, and we were really interested to learn about her project as it relates to Plastic Free Delaware's mission and just kind of how we all make decisions when we're out shopping. So I hope you all are as interested as I am in what she's going to share with us today. So Emily, why don't I turn things over to you?
Thanks, Dee. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Ortiz. I'm a fourth-year undergrad student at the University of Delaware. I'm double majoring in energy and environmental policy and economics, and I'm going to be giving a presentation on consumer preferences of different labels and if those labels can influence what we buy. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Um, so Can everyone see this? Cool. Okay. All right. Yep. So the title of my presentation is Can Environmental and Social Labels Influence What We Purchase? Okay. All right. And to start off with my motivation for this project, overconsumption has put a lot of strain on both natural resources and we as people who depend on them to survive. There's been a large increase in water shortages, air and water pollution, and habitat loss due to unsustainable industry practices. About 70% of global freshwater is used for agriculture, and about 19% is used for energy and industry. Sorry. So that doesn't really leave much for us to use, like much water for us to use at home. So we need to be very careful about how these industries use water and making sure that they're not using it unsustainably or polluting it in ways that will lead us not to have enough water for a lot of places in the world. And up to 40% of the land in the world is degraded, which basically means that certain parts of the world are going to have a lot of trouble bouncing back from climate disasters because the land is not at its full potential, and there's a lot of efforts being put in to try and um, re like make the land back to where it was before it was degraded for agriculture and industry. So excessive demand also has led to unfair worker treatment in various industries. As we may know, cheap goods do require cheap and unregulated production. The International Labor Organization reported that 17.3 million people in the world are forced to do labor in the private sector. So there's a lot of um, low wages and sometimes even child labor, which is not allowed in certain countries. But in order to get cheap goods, sometimes forced labor is what industries choose to do. And they also reported that migrant workers are 3 times more at risk of forced labor. And many of those migrant workers work in agriculture and manufacturing. One example is Jamaican farm workers in Canada who are reporting that they are living in very unsafe conditions in Canada when they're working at the farms. And Canada has a multi-billion-dollar agriculture industry, so they are profiting a lot from work like this, where workers are getting underpaid and they're scared to say anything because they're not in their home country and able to make um, policy decisions in these other countries that they're working in. So the UN Statistics Department also reported there's been an increase in corporate sustainability, which means that companies are publishing more sustainability reports saying that they're using better resource management, things like, in the clothing industry, they use a lot of dyes. So stuff like making sure that they're not getting the dyes into the fresh water in the areas around factories. But there's also been a report that there's been a fall in sustainable consumption. So on the consumer side, we seem to be consuming a lot more than what we actually demand, or demanding more than what we actually consume in the end. So there's a lot of food waste and clothing waste and things like that. So the University of Delaware has a undergraduate research program, and over the summer they select students to get to do a summer research project, which I was thankfully selected as one of those students. And so I thought about my interests, which were product labeling, environmental and social protections, consumer preferences on different products, and also international political economy, which is basically how markets, individuals, and states interact with each other to shape the society that we live in. And to highlight some previous work that I've done, in spring 2024, I helped a graduate student, Davidson Nwanu, who did a research project on consumer preferences on health and environmental attributes of milk. He did a survey that measured what consumers preferred in terms of health attributes and the environmental impacts of milk. And in this focus group, I found that a lot of the participants valued price the most and their individual benefits, which usually was their health benefits. They preferred, like organic or freshness, expiration dates that weren't super soon. So a lot of individual benefits that come from that were important to them. And there was also a talk about how we as individuals have responsibility in making sure that we don't exploit the world for the products that we need, but also that companies have to take that responsibility as well. To highlight what some other researchers have found in terms of labeling and sustainability consumption, this first paper wrote about they looked at a lot of surveys that measured consumer preferences on environmental and sustainable attributes. And they found that environmental and social responsibility were highly valued labeling schemes on dietary surveys. I believe organic was the most preferred attribute in any survey that had organic as one of the attributes pertaining to the products that they were asked about if they would prefer. And consumers, in the second paper, consumers are willing to pay premium prices for bioplastic versions of cheaper or non-durable goods than higher priced goods. Basically, in this research project, they surveyed consumers in Italy about how they prefer the making of different products. One was a jacket, which is a higher price good, and one was a disposable cup. So they basically found that people were willing to pay higher prices for bioplastic cups rather than higher prices for bioplastic jackets, which is basically showing that people are willing to pay a premium price as long as that premium price is on the cheaper end of goods. This third study reported that consumers who attach more importance to sustainability paid more attention to sustainability labels. They were researching how visual attention correlates to how much consumers or participants actually prefer the goods that they were looking at, and that's what they found. And this kind of led me to build my own research questions for this project. My first question was, do consumers pay more attention to environmental attributes, social attributes, or the price of products when shopping? My second question was, do environmental certifications or social certifications lead to a higher willingness to pay for products? And my third question was, is there a difference in attention to environmental certifications, social certifications, and price when consumers are shopping for different products? I was hoping these questions would further my understanding about consumer perspectives on sustainable consumption, and if they had better information about these certifications, if that could influence their behavior when they shop, or at least simulate a shopping experience. To give some background about the different components of my project, choice experiments, they are a research method designed by, designed by researchers to gather information about participants' preferences towards different or varying levels of attributes of the same product. These experiments usually reflect real-life choices, usually giving participants an option to choose not to purchase a certain product. Participants usually make trade-offs in these types of experiments because they can't exactly choose. They could choose one or the other or choose not to. So they have to think about what different attributes are important to them in terms of making this decision. And if they would rather give up one attribute to get a different attribute at different prices or something else. And these experiments also help us place value on different attributes. Basically, by choosing one option could show that you are placing more value on the attributes that are in that option. And economists use choice experiments to study the influence of human behavior on our world. By simulating real-life choices, economic researchers can develop current and future policies to maximize societal well-being. And this is an example of a choice experiment. Basically, here they were checking consumer preferences for plant-based and cultured meat burgers. See option A, option B, and option C, and also a option to not purchase any of these products is shown. They want to basically control for taste, size, and nutritional content of these burgers, and just want to measure how consumers would prefer the way these different burgers are actually made. And they found that most people preferred just the regular meat burger, but they did find some people were actually leaning towards the plant-based or cultured meat burger, which is basically a burger made in a lab. So that's just one experiment of a choice, one example of a choice experiment. All right, and eye tracking experiments. These are also used in economic or other studies. Basically, our visual attention can reveal actual preference versus stated preference. Participants, sometimes they feel pressured to select a more socially appealing option, even though it's not their real preference. So eye tracking experiments kind of measure attention to certain attributes, and higher attention to certain attributes can actually show its importance in participants' decision making. These photos here are actually a photo of the eye tracker that I used in my experiment in the Center for Experimental and Applied Economics lab at the University of Delaware. It's called the Tobii Pro Fusion eye tracker. The bar at the bottom, if you can see, has like 2 red dots. That's basically showing that it's recording your eye movements. So I decided to design a choice experiment with an eye tracker, so combining those two components that I just talked about. I wanted to see preferences on fair labor accreditation and recycled material, and I used strawberries and t-shirts to represent different industries that impact both humans and the environment. Strawberries representing the agriculture industry and t-shirts representing the clothing industry or manufacturing in general. Fair labor accreditation is my social attribute. It makes sure that companies that have this accreditation are adhering to policies such as fair wages, no child labor, and no forced overtime. The recycled material attribute is my eco-friendly attribute. It basically varies in the use of recycled material in the production process of each product. So for the t-shirts, this would be the actual making of the t-shirts using recycled materials in that process. And for the strawberries, I made sure to show that it was just the container that the strawberries actually came in was made from recycled material. And over here on the right is the different levels of each attribute that I used. So for recycled material, each product could either have no recycled material in the production process or 100% recycled material in the production process. For fair labor, it was either the company was not fair labor accredited or the company was fair labor accredited, and these were the different prices that I used for each product. Strawberries are the cheaper product and t-shirts were the higher product with a lot more range in their prices. And here are the choice screens that I designed for this experiment. These are two separate choice screens. So the participants looked at the strawberry choice screens only for eight screens total, and it varied in the levels of the attributes. So this is just one example of a choice screen that they would look at, and then they would look at choice screens for just t-shirts and then choose their option. And they would sit in front of the eye tracker and just verbally tell me if they would choose option A, option B, or option C, which is not to purchase either product, which reflects our choices in the real world where we can go to a store and choose we don't want to purchase any of the products that I see here. So it's basically just like a real life choice. And then here is the data that I gathered. These are heat maps, where the heat map is more red. That means that was the highest attention on average. And just to go through every single part of this, right here is the price. So we can see that price was definitely the most paid attention to attribute in this experiment. And over here, I labeled how, on average, how much did people look at the price for strawberries versus t-shirts. So they paid attention to price a little more in strawberries, it seems, than in t-shirts. And these times are seconds on average. And here is the recycled material attribute. So participants looked at this attribute for t-shirts more than they did for strawberries. And the fair labor attribute, participants looked at this for strawberries more than t-shirts. And they did look at option C, but not as much, probably because there wasn't as much like visual components to option C. It was just a box that said none of these. So overall, what does this tell us? Price was the most attention-heavy factor in participants' choices. which I expected. In the focus groups, that was also the case. Price was usually brought up anytime I asked about um, what they prefer in their shopping experiences. They always choose the lower price goods, no matter what they buy usually. Fair labor accreditation on average had more attention than recycled material. Again, with that higher attention in strawberries than in t-shirts. And recycled material had the lowest attention on average, again with a higher attention in the shirts. Just to show why research like this matters, it showcases uh, changes in consumer behavior over time. If research like this was, conducted today and then maybe 5 years from now to see how that behavior has changed over time. And it could lead to more sustainable practices in the industries that we're measuring, which could lead to more sustainable production overall, giving us more options to consume sustainably. It also increases awareness of the social and environmental impacts of overconsumption and excessive demand of cheap products. It also could improve marketing strategies through labeling social and environmental attributes if they increase sustainable consumption. So if people are seeing that, oh, people are, they're leaning more to buy sustainable productive sustainably produced products, we're going to market our products to fit that, but hopefully in a good way, because sometimes companies do greenwashing where they say that they're making products sustainably, but in practice it's not very sustainable. So hopefully just pushing the dynamic to or towards more sustainable production and consumption. My future directions for this research, I definitely would like to do further data analysis to compare attention and willingness to pay for certain attributes. More research on the impacts of information and education on consumption habits. Things like social inequalities could impact how people make their consumption decisions, and information for consumers to make more sustainable consumption decisions is important. And also informing consumers and policymakers about changes in consumption to improve the environment and society. Hopefully in the future, there will be more policies pertaining to sustainable production, which we have seen, but there's still a lot of places in the world that allow bad industry practices to continue. And I would like to acknowledge my advisor, Dr. Pomforster, who I believe is here today, and also the Center for Experimental and Applied Economics for the guidance, inspiration, and resources to do this project. And also Tracy Bryant wrote a U Daily article about this project if you're interested in learning more about that. Hopefully that QR code still works if you would like to read that article. But yep, that's what I have.
That it's so awesome, Emily. Thank you. Really interesting. And I guess so if anyone has questions, I guess if you want to raise your hand or put them in the chat. I'm just wondering if your research or study on this topic has given you any insight into like if price is the primary factor and say, being eco-friendly is the secondary factor, like um what difference in price is there, a variation that you saw, like 5%, 10%, 20%, where people were willing to have buy something that's eco-friendly versus just the lowest price option?
So I haven't gotten to that part of the analysis, seeing like the actual percentages of the where people make their trade-off towards a cheaper good instead because the other option is too high. But overall, at least from just the responses, it seemed that for every single option, like choice that they had, they always typically chose the cheaper one in both types of products. So, yeah.
Which I guess isn't surprising. I know that in the state code, there's a purchasing policy that allows, or actually, I think requires, but I'm not really sure it's being followed, but allows them, or kind of suggests anyway, that they should consider eco-friendly options like recycled content paper versus virgin wood paper,
Mhm.
up to 5% variance in price.
Mhm.
So if you're comparing, say, two types of paper, they should be buying the eco-friendly paper if it's no more than 5% more expensive. But I don't think that's really happening. It's something I've been trying to look into, and there's supposed to be a state committee that I don't think exists, but um, and we're looking into it to do something like that at the county level too. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting to know like what to cap it at so that people actually sustainably consume. I do see a question in the comments asking about who the subjects were and how many subjects were there. So this was a summer experiment where I needed participants in person. So I basically got volunteers who work for the center or in UD to come in, and I had 8 participants, both students and workers, just come in to volunteer their time for this experiment because it's kind of hard to get things like this going in the summer where there's not many students on campus. So I would want to do a larger scale experiment in the future to get better results.
And does the software, could you make it work on Zoom? I bet you could get a lot of people to do it virtually.
Yeah, I mean, the eye tracker is like an actual, we only have like 1 or 2 of them, and it's like something you actually have to have on you. So unfortunately, I don't think it could be done. It would be really cool if it's
Have it
something.
as an add-on to Zoom.
Yeah.
Um, any other questions? Anyone, you could feel free to unmute and
If you don't mind, I would love to add something.
sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Palm-Forster. So I've been working with Emily as her advisor on this project. And first, I wanted to thank you all for inviting her to speak with you today and share her research experience with you. It's really exciting to know that people care about what you're working on. And I think it was a wonderful opportunity for Emily. But I also just wanted to note and applaud Emily for this. Starting undergraduate research project for a summer and being expected to come up with your own idea that's well motivated and to design something and collect some data from people is a big task, right? And it's something that often by the end of the summer, most undergraduate students, unless the project was already underway, they don't have any data to talk about because it's hard to get to that point in such a short amount of time. So I just wanted to congratulate Emily in this space and just say how proud of her we all are that she was able to join us and in this short period of time have this output to talk about and to continue building on as she moves into her senior year. So I just wanted to give her that shout out.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Plum Forster has been very helpful. I started working with the center back in November, so to see kind of where it's led me is really exciting to look back on. Really cool.
Lots of options for you to kind of keep going and study this more interesting topic. There's a question in the chat from Nicole. How is the pricing markup on eco-friendly consumables regulated? Is this even possible? So Nicole, feel free to unmute and if you want to elaborate or whatever, but I don't know if Nicole has insight on that yet or not.
I really don't, kind of just hoping someone here in the guest chat here might have some direction on this. Listening to this presentation and realizing that it is price that holds a lot of people back from making the big difference on what we choose. And knowing by myself, when I go and I look, I want to choose the good option all the time, the better option all the time. But sometimes the price is outrageously different between, and you understand why, and like me, I'm willing to pay a percentage. I haven't, put a number on that percentage, but a fair amount more. But it seems like there's a lot of gouging on items, and I could be wrong, on items that are eco-friendly, 100% recycled materials, whatever. So is there a way to regulate? I don't know if that's even possible, but is that something that anyone's heard that's come up in conversation?
I don't know about regulating pricing. I think that might be difficult unless there's really gouging, like really obvious gouging maybe going on, but I think it would have to be at a level that really, raise some eyebrows in whatever appropriate federal government office would apply. I would like to kind of off the topic of pricing, but to Emily's point about kind of greenwashing, it's something we talk about often is, there's often a lot of misguided labeling that implies something is eco-friendly when it's not, or implies it's recyclable when it's really not truly recyclable, and that drives me crazy. So I'd love to see, there definitely are regulations around those kinds of things. But to your point, Nicole, I think we probably need, and to Emily's point, we probably need better and more regulation. It's something that we've talked about, Plastic Free Delaware. There's a kind of a national movement called Truth in Labeling and dealing with the chasing arrow symbol. And because if you look at a plastic packaging and it has the chasing arrow symbol on it, which it has to by law, but it's not truly recyclable in your curbside bin, then I don't think it should have the chasing arrow symbol on it. And there is a kind of a growing movement around the country to revise the laws regarding the chasing arrow symbol. So that's sort of an example of where I think we could use improvement in labeling for sure. And to Emily, you might have some other examples in terms of like the greenwashing, where things are sourced or other things like that you've run into.
I think I see it a lot in like fast fashion a lot. I see a lot more companies promoting like recycling systems and like sustainable production, like saying like certain products are made with X amount of recycled material, and improving the environment, but they're still in their other products using a lot of not recycled material or material that's bad for the environment, or sourcing from companies in other countries that have like bad labor practices. So I think although companies are reporting like more sustainable like practices, it doesn't mean that their entire practice is sustainable, which is really upsetting. Which is kind of, hopefully some sort of regulation can stop that, but it's hard because it's a world issue and not really something we can acknowledge like, we can't really enforce like policies like that around the world if companies are using other countries' labor and stuff like that. Yeah.
If I could just mention a couple of things tied in with this, there's an organization called Green America, which actually produces a catalog of green products and green companies. And also the concern with the pricing needs to be addressed, I think needs to be addressed before the products hit the market. So, and that's another strong point of this group, Green America, is they focus on socially responsible screened investments so that the free market is getting involved rather than having the government come in and regulate. If people are aware what their companies are actually doing, that they're investing in, then that's really at least from the early 70s on, companies have sort of taken a turn to just focusing on stockholder return rather than as much on the sustainability. And so if the investment community looks at them, the concerning thing there is that right now there's a very strong pushback against that type of investing. Some of the Wall Street folks are saying that, you shouldn't be allowed to screen and put these in your retirement portfolio or pension funds and things like that. So this is really this pricing at the consumer level is really important, because they're actually trying to erode some of the progress that has been made in socially responsible and screening of investments. So I think, getting this to a bigger population spread across different age groups and so forth may be a really important thing in the next few years.
Thanks for that. That's interesting. We'll have to check out Green America. I don't know if that's tied to the whole truth in labeling issue, where I know that there is a federal it's called the Green Guide. I don't know if that's from the same organization, that they're trying to update the Green Guide regarding labeling and truth in labeling and the chasing arrow symbol and all that. So it might be tied together. I don't know if that's the same org. Fred, I know you have a question. You're on mute.
Hi. I was surprised a month ago when I took a look at the DSWA recycling guide. It used to be they did the numbers, they talked about what it was, and now they publish, and I cannot find the numbers anywhere. Now they publish this thing about types of containers, yes, and stuff we don't want, bags and stuff like that. They've gone away from, you were talking about labeling, they've gone away from having a discriminated type of labeling to just kind of a blur. And I really wonder, because we see increasingly stuff that I'm not sure if it's polystyrene or PET, and maybe doesn't have a 1 or a 5 on it, and scratching head and going, and then I go with their guidelines, I throw it in. My real question is, what happens to it at this point, since they don't seem to actually discriminate anymore?
You're talking about what DSWA allows in its curbside bins?
Yeah, and actually I'm talking about the criteria that they now publish. If I could share a screen, I could show you.
Yeah, Fred, are you referring to the Recyclopedia website?
Am I referring to the recycling what?
There's a website called Recyclopedia that DSWA puts out. That might be what you're referring to, where you could look up.
I'm referring to dswa.com, WP content uploads, decal 2019 decal single stream PDF, as opposed to in like single stream recycling under programs under DWSA.
Well, that's like a handout that they've put out.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
but
do have a website called Recyclopedia, and I think if you just Google it, Recyclopedia DSWA, and you can specifically type in shampoo bottle or whatever it is, and it'll tell you whether it's recyclable or not, like what to look for.
no. My point is, if you go to DSWA, they give you no more refined criteria than pretty pictures and broad, vague descriptions. They've eliminated their more explicit information.
Well,
I
I'm not
I
sure.
looked really hard to find it, couldn't find it.
Do you want to share your screen if Emily
I
wants to
could.
take her screen
I'm
down?
not sure I'm capable of doing it, but I can try.
I'll just say that I put the link in the chat for our special guest next month is from DSWA, so they can answer all your curbside and recycling questions directly next month. So that link's in the chat, but it's on our website and stuff too, of course. We also have, Fred, I think you've done it before, but anyone that's interested, we actually also have a tour scheduled of what's called the MRF, fondly
Yeah.
called the MRF, which is the materials recycling facility that DSWA subcontracts the running of, but it's down there by their education center. So it's really eye-opening. If you've never been there before, I encourage you to join us and you can see what happens to all your curbside stuff. So that's
So
also in October. Okay.
I'm sorry, I have
Sorry, go ahead.
attempted to share. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. So
So scroll down, there we go. What goes in your curbside?
that is as explicit as they get. And then they
You
got
can't
this.
click on like it doesn't give you the numbers.
Nope. It went away. And I looked hard, could not find it. Now, it is good that they have this kind of guidance. And by the way, yeah, you can go and they actually have like a container, not for little styrofoam, but for styrofoam sheets. And they got places for batteries. I didn't see anything about bags. They
I
have
take all
multiple
kinds of
containers
styrofoam
for
down there.
electronics. So I think they're making progress, but I drilled in with them once before, got the information of what Reliance took away, but didn't get around to drilling into, I think it's Reliance. So where's it actually go? And does it actually get recycled? Or do we send it to Nigeria for some dump or China or
So,
some incinerator somewhere or anyway, just thought I'd share that because I was really surprised when suddenly polypropylene was just fine. It's a plastic container. And I don't know they're doing anything with it.
Yeah, I'm not the expert on this, and like Dee said, we have somebody coming next month, but the way they sort the recycling, they're probably just taking in more than they can actually recycle because the plastics are sorted out by type and color and everything, and if it doesn't meet any of those criteria, then it's ending up going eventually to the landfill. So that the way they're just taking in more so they can get all the things that are recyclable, but the things that aren't recyclable are eventually going to the landfill because that's where everything else
But they compress it, they bale it, and they send it somewhere. I'm just kind of curious what happens to it.
Before they sort it. They sort. If you go on the tour, you'll see this, that they will actually specifically program it to pull out all of the red plastic number 5s, and then that gets baled together and sent off. They're not just putting all the plastic together. They're specifically sorting it before it even leaves the facility by type and color and number and everything. So if there's outliers, they just don't get recycled.
But I am surprised from what you showed, Fred, that they don't have the numbers on there. That's surprising.
It's gone away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So join us next month and we can all ask them directly what happened. So well, any other questions or comments for Emily? Got a little off track there. On track for our work, but maybe not for Emily's research. Well, we thank you so much, Emily, for being here with us today. And Leah, thanks for you joining us as well and supporting her research and her project. And would love to hear from you again when you delve in more deeply, I guess, through this coming school year and maybe beyond, depending on what you end up doing after this year. So thanks so much for being here, everybody, and join us in October, as I said, for the two they're sort of related events coming up.
Can I just introduce myself real quick?
Sure.
My name is Jenna Brinkworth, if you're wondering who in the heck I am. And I'm actually in Buffalo, New York. I work at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. And we are working on addressing cigarette butt litter. And of course, as I'm sure most of you know, it's the #1 form of picked up litter in the world. And with that work, we have been putting together a group of environmental agencies and partners that can work together on the issue of plastics and, cleaner, safer environment. So I'm just always interested in what other municipalities are doing around litter and pollution. So I saw the work that you're doing and these lunch and learns, and I thought it might be a good opportunity for me to, see what you all are doing in Delaware. So I appreciate this topic because we do a lot of different events, and I'm always trying to make sure to mention for people when they go to the grocery store, they're shopping, hey, look at it. Everything's in plastic. This is a concern. We have to do better. I think so many people, right? That's the way it's been all our lives. You don't think twice about it. So it's such a hard thing to turn around, but it's nice to hear of other good work that's happening out there, and hopefully in our different areas and communities, we can all make a difference.
Thanks, Jenna, for sharing that with us. If you have a second, can you stay behind and we can chat? I could probably tell you a lot more about related things that we're doing and some others are doing, and maybe actually loop you into some of those. I know there's a conference being planned that you might be interested in. So,
Okay. Yeah,
participate in,
thanks.
that'd be awesome.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anybody else? All right, well, thanks for joining us today, everyone, and hope to see you in October. And Emily, best of luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right, thanks. Take care, everybody.